Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday, wherever you are, the second Wednesday of the year. And I hope you're doing great wherever you happen to be. A couple of notes here before we start the whole program. Of course, a lot of you have reached out to me asking if I was okay because of the fires in Los Angeles. I'm not in Los Angeles today. We're actually at the Acqualina Resort in Sunny Isles Beach in Miami. But for all of my friends in Los Angeles, so many of whom have been affected, so many of whom have had to be evacuated, and some of them have already lost their homes. This is a devastating fire burning in more than one location, if you've been following the news. As some of you know, I'm also a fireman in New York, and I can tell you this fire is moving at an alarming speed, aided by very large gusts of wind at high velocity. It is moving at about 2 miles an hour, which by fire standards is rapid. And what's really dangerous here, of course, is not just the fire itself, but the embers that are carried in the wind and then start fires elsewhere. I've been lucky. Where I live in Los Angeles is not that near to where the fires are located. However, this is nowhere near under control. Obviously, everybody's monitoring this carefully. You know it's a big fire when LA County is asking for all off-duty firefighters to report anyway. And we just hope for the best in a very, very bad situation where you're seeing the fire jump highways, jump freeways, and go all the way down to the beach. Very, very serious situation, which we will continue to follow. But I just wanted to start by telling everybody to have your hearts and minds and thoughts with those folks in the Los Angeles area. Second of all, lots of stuff to talk about today about the continuing investigation on the shoot down of the Azerbaijan plane, of the Jeju Airline 737 in Korea. Some unanswered questions there. I'm going to get into that. And then, of course, answering your questions and talking about maybe some uplifting and fun things this week as well. As I said at the beginning, we're coming from the Acqualina Resort on Sunny Isles Beach here in Miami. I first came here when it opened back in 2006. So here we are 19 years later, and it's better and bigger than ever. It's a great location with a great beach, great restaurants, by the way, everything from Il Molino to Avra. And they've done a really great job, very thoughtful job in terms of the design of the rooms. You know how I feel about lighting in rooms. They fixed that problem a long time ago in both the bathroom and the guest rooms, and so many other touches. But first, let's get to the Azerbaijan story. As you know, Russia has already apologized for the shoot down, but the ramifications of that are still expanding. Azerbaijan and other airlines are no longer flying in that airspace. They're no longer flying anywhere near that airspace. So now you have to take the globe and take a look at where the airspace is essentially restricted in so many areas of the world right now, more than in recent memory. We're talking about Iran, Ukraine, Russia. We're talking about the Middle East, by the Suez, by Yemen, and we're just getting started. And what that means is, in terms of air safety and in terms of your experience as a passenger, your flights are going to be longer. They're going to be burning more fuel because they're going to have to fly around these conflicted areas. And those areas may be expanded depending on what the conflicts are on the ground. It's not a pretty picture. But we do know exactly what happened with Azerbaijan. The problem with that was once he was hit by the missile did not initially shoot down the plane, but it hit the plane and it created a hydraulic leak, which the pilots were aware of. And they asked for permission to land at the nearest airport. That permission was denied. But think about this. In a situation like that, what are they going to do? Shoot you down a second time? Land the plane. The pilots here elected to turn around and fly somewhere else. And then they were compromised completely when they had the total hydraulic failure and crashed. It's amazing that anyone survived that particular impact. However, in the other incident with Jeju Air, it's not surprising because nobody survived except 2 flight attendants flying in the back of the plane, in the very back of the plane where the tail broke off. This was a devastating accident. So many unanswered questions. The cockpit voice recorder was badly damaged. It's now being analyzed by the NTSB lab in Washington to try to figure out the last 30 minutes of conversation in the cockpit, both radio and crew member to crew member, because you've got to create a second-by-second timeline of what happened. Because based on what we know, and remember, we don't know what we don't know, but based on what we do know, there were birds in the area that was reported to the plane. The plane then acknowledged that they'd been hit by birds, and then they issued a mayday. But here's the crazy part, and every pilot that I'm talking to, it's a head scratcher. They can't figure it out. If you're already on approach to land and you get hit by birds and it knocks out one of your engines, your plane is designed to land on one engine easily. Part one. Part two, you're already set to land. Why wouldn't you land? What this plane did was it did a go-around, meaning he throttled up on the left engine and went around, which tells investigators he had power in the left engine. And then he came in and landed with no landing gear down, no flaps lowered, no slats extended, at speeds that were way too fast, right? 50 to 60 knots faster than a normal speed for landing. And then, of course, you know, the devastating impact of hitting that concrete barrier at the end of the runway, which never should have been there in the first place. So do we have a situation where the pilots, A, panicked, didn't do an emergency pre-flight checklist? How could losing one engine impact your ability to lower the landing gear? Every plane that's flying today has a manual override in the cockpit where they can lift up a hatch and manually crank down that landing gear. That wasn't done either. So did they lose power in the left engine? Did they not have a choice? These are all unanswered questions, and we're obviously following it up. And as soon as we know more, I will let you know in a subsequent report. But it's a bad situation on so many different levels. Now, some other stuff to talk about. Last week, I talked about that DOT fine against JetBlue, which is precedent setting. To remind you what it was, for the first time in the department's history, they fined an airline for operating chronically delayed flights. In the case of JetBlue, they were operating at least one flight from JFK to Raleigh-Durham in one 9-month period, 145 times late. This is nuts. The DOT says they had warned JetBlue that they were violating the rule. JetBlue didn't fix it, hence the fine. You know, bad behavior needs to be followed by financial consequence, and that's what's happened here. Now, that $2 million fine, in essence, $1 million is devoted to going back to passengers who were affected by those delays. And we have no idea how they're divvying up the pie, but at least in concept, that's a good idea. But let's move on from that, because nothing happens in a vacuum. It's not just JetBlue at fault here. It's the FAA. Why? Excuse me. Because they allow airlines to schedule flights where they know they don't have enough air traffic controllers to handle the flow. Remember, we have at least 3 air traffic control centers where the employment levels are under 85%. That's an unacceptable staffing level, which is forcing these air traffic controllers to work what? Mandatory overtime. That's absurd. It should never be allowed. So you have those two things in combination, both within the same agency, right? The FAA reports to the DOT. So many changes need to happen. But this is the opening salvo. I guarantee you the DOT investigation is looking at chronically delayed flights of other airlines. So you need a 2-pronged approach here. One, airlines have to schedule more realistically. They can't schedule just to be competitive. I said this last week. Let's do the math. There's not a runway in the world, whether it's Mumbai or Madison, Wisconsin, that can handle more than 23 takeoffs in an hour, right? 2 minutes of separation, maybe 2.5 between takeoffs. So why are the airlines allowed to schedule 40 departures at 8 o'clock in the morning. Absurd. And then the FAA knows they can't handle the flow anyway. So they keep planes on the ground, hence chronically delayed flights. So we'll be following that story as well. One more thing. I've gotten a lot of feedback from what I talked about last week about airline-linked credit cards for mileage programs. And I did the math, and I'm going to do it again. How many of you have been on an airline? It's not just one airline, it's a number of them, where after the flight attendants finish the safety briefing, they start hawking credit cards. And their scripted speech is loaded with lies. Here's what they say. If you sign up for this credit card, which gives you 1 mile per dollar that you spend, you're going to get a bonus of 60,000 miles. Now, these are their words, not mine. Good for 2 flights anywhere we go. That's a lie. First of all, the presumption is when you get the 60,000 miles, you can just go take 2 flights. Number one, the redemption levels are way above 60,000 miles for almost every flight. And two, who says the airline's going to make those rewards available? But it gets worse. A lot of these cards will come with, as a bonus, if you spend X number of dollars in the first 6 months or a year of having the card, you're going to get what? A free companion certificate so someone can fly with you for free. That's lie number 2. Here's the way it works. On one particular card, you have to spend $20,000 in a calendar year to get that certificate, which then costs you $99 to redeem, plus up to $54 in taxes. So there's $144 you weren't counting on. But wait, it gets worse. Your companion can only fly on the same flight as you, in the same fare category as you. The companion gets no miles and has no rights. So if you have to cancel your flight, the companion ticket is canceled. It can't be used again. Now, let's do a little further math. Since only 51% of Americans pay their credit card bills in full every month, you're paying 26% interest on average to have that card, which means by the time you redeem any miles, that ticket's cost you $5,000, not to mention the companion ticket. Wouldn't it just be cheaper to not get the card and just buy a ticket when you needed one? By the way, that's a rhetorical question. All right, so much for that card. Now, let's have some levity here. There was a time that airlines actually competed on service, on comfort, and God forbid, even on food. Take a look at this ad. I won't tell you what year yet. Take a look at this television ad from TWA.
For some reason, people think all airlines are the same. They're not. Several airlines bought 747s, but TWA built the first 747 terminal. TWA was the first airline to give you private customs and immigration facilities. Most other airlines still share. Only TWA gives you a choice of 2 movies on every movie flight. At busier airports, we moved our departures to 15 minutes before the hour, so thousands of our passengers beat the crowds every day. For years, the coach passenger has helped pay our bills. We're paying him back with a whole new coach service on TWA ambassador flights. Whether you're flying in the United States or around the world, it pays to spend your money carefully. All airlines are not the same.
Today, TWA means another thing. Try walking across. Anyway, anyone want to guess what year that commercial was from? Anybody? It was the 1970s. And in those days, they actually had, on some flights like United, had chefs on board. Coach seats were the equivalent of today's first class seats on many flights. So anyway, a little blast from the past I'd like to share with you to show you about the golden age of jet aviation when these things sort of mattered, or maybe they didn't. But that's what that was about. Now, moving on from that, this is a problem that's happened with Delta flight attendants and crew members, with American flight attendants and crew members, with JetBlue flight attendants and crew members. What are they allowed to wear other than their uniform that is not going to antagonize, in a highly politicized arena, passengers and other crew members? Meaning, can you wear a pin that makes a political statement? You would think the answer would be no. Well, these rules by the airlines internally for their crew change all the time. And I'm going to show you a video of what just happened on an American Airlines flight, where a passenger objected to a flight attendant wearing what he perceived was a pro-Palestinian, anti-Semitic pin. Take a look.
Supporting terrorism. You're supporting terrorism with your pin. You made us so uncomfortable as being Jewish.
Yeah,
Huh?
no, you don't touch me.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
You're the one who touched me.
You're supporting terrorism.
You are
And
not
don't-
anti-Semitic.
What are you stopping me here? Because I'm Jewish? Because I'm Jewish?
No.
No, because I'm
We don't even
Jewish?
know that you were
Yeah,
Jewish.
you are.
We don't know
Hold
that
on.
you're
Is
Jewish.
that why you're stopping me?
No,
You're being
I am
anti-Semitic.
not. You are harassing
Let
the
me
crew.
get off this
you
plane
are
right now.
harassing the crew.
Let me
We're
get
calling
off
the
this
police
plane.
right now.
You
You
go
are
wherever
harassing
you want.
the crew.
I'm harassing the
Yes,
crew.
you are.
You're not letting me off this
yes,
plane.
you are. You're harassing
What
the
am
crew
I
right now.
doing? Trying to get off this plane.
You touched me.
Who are you?
Don't touch
Get
me.
away
Who
from
are you to touch me?
Get away from
No,
me.
you are not getting off this plane.
This is ridiculous.
You are ridiculous.
Don't record her,
I'm
sir.
recording
Don't
whatever I
record
want.
You
her.
are not permitted
Get
to
away.
record.
You're
Get
not
out.
allowed to
Get-
record.
you
You're
are
not
not.
allowed to record.
She won't let me out.
No, you're not. Because he touched me. And you guys are harassing the crew with your
Interesting, right? First of all, he didn't touch them. Second of all, he's allowed to record. How do you like that? And third of all, he raises an interesting point. Wouldn't it just be easier for the airlines to have a strict policy that you cannot wear any political slogan, sign, pin, t-shirt, or hat if you're working that day on the airline? I mean, politics should not get involved in this, right? The flying experience is tough enough. So, by the way, the result of that video is American Airlines issued a somewhat politically correct statement saying they were talking to the flight attendants and they wanted to make sure that the passenger service was going to be better. That's their way of saying passenger was right. So look for some different changes now in airline crew requirements about what they can and cannot wear. Everybody has the right to exercise free speech, but when you're working representing an airline, I think you need to limit that simply because you're in an enclosed aluminum cylinder traveling at 35,000 feet, and not everybody's going to take it the right way. Simple as that. All right, so much for that. A number of you have also asked me about my upcoming travel and adventure show speeches. The first one's going to be this Saturday and Sunday in Atlanta. That's followed by Chicago and Los Angeles and Denver and Phoenix and a few more locations. There they are right there. And we're going to post on our screen here a VIP code. Yep, they actually gave me one. So if you want to come see me, you get a discount. So take a look at that. I hope I get a chance to see you in Atlanta this weekend. They're forecasting snow, which Atlanta does not know how to deal with, but I'll be there anyway. And I look forward to seeing you. And then, of course, followed by New York at the Javits Center, then Chicago, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Denver, San Francisco, the Bay Area, actually Santa Clara, California, and finally Washington, D.C. So please come out. I'd love to see you guys. And now let's go and say hello to some folks. And as always, they will not be denied. Jim and Harriet from Richmond were first up to say hi. And thank you for your wishes about us doing okay on the fires in Southern California. I'm okay. As I said before, I'm in Florida. So many of my friends are not okay. And we'll be continuing to monitor what's going on and hope they can survive on so many different levels. All right, Matthew's saying hello from Syracuse. Jack's saying good morning from Jack and Diane. Here's a little story about Jack and Diane. Okay, in Indiana. Paul is saying greetings from frigid Ashland, Virginia. Tayo's in Maryland. Okay, hello, Tayo. Yes, I agree with you. It is very sad to see what's happening in Los Angeles with the fires. Patty's in the North Shore. Carol Ann is in Florida, not far from me, I hope. Tim is saying hello from freezing Atlanta. We were just talking about that. As I mentioned last week, I'm taking Hurtigruten expedition to Antarctica at the end of February. Any advice for the first-time cruiser? And you'll see me in Atlanta this weekend. Yeah. Bottom line is, Hurtigruten runs a great operation. In fact, you'll be probably on one of their hybrid ships. They've done a great job in that area too, in terms of responsible travel. And chances are you'll be doing the Drake Shakes. So prepare accordingly, all right? But you're going to have a great time. Once you're in Antarctica, the waters are generally flat, calm, and maybe if you want to do this, and that's also weather dependent, the captain may let you do a polar plunge. And what they do is they put a platform out, they attach a very strong ankle bracelet on you, and give you a few opportunities to do either whiskey or vodka shots, and then you know what's next. You jump in, and then they pull you right back. So have fun with that too. Patty's from the Vizcaya Museum here. I went there when I was a child with my parents. I loved it. Camilla, cheers from Tucson. Colleen saying, thank you, you're safe. Yes. You know what? Colleen says, how do you stay upbeat and productive during these unusually challenging times? What choice do I have? I'm a pragmatic optimist. I have every reason to believe they will control the fire. The damage will be substantial. There's no doubt about that. And people will recover. At this report, and I hope I'm right about this, I do not believe there have been any fatalities yet. There's something that's positive, and let's hope they can maintain that. But the evacuation process in Los Angeles was crazy. People abandoning cars, and in the process, blocking the roads for rescue vehicles and fire apparatus to get back up. So they actually had to bring in bulldozers to push cars out so the trucks could get up. It's a mess. Jeff is saying hello from Smoky Santa Monica, packing a bag just in case. If you're living in an area, whether it's California or the Adirondacks, it doesn't matter. You should always have a go bag ready to go. I'm not saying you have to pack the world's biggest duffel with all your childhood keepsakes, but you do need to have something ready to go in the event of a mandatory evacuation. So you got the right idea, Jeff. Okay. Deb's saying hi from New Jersey. Scott's saying greetings from 23 degrees in Chicago. Quick reminder about the discount code. You've got one now. We've just posted it. Okay. Is there such a thing as a good yearly travel insurance where you just pay one price and it covers you on all your travels? Yeah, there is. It's medical evacuation and repatriation insurance. You buy a yearly policy. It's about $600. And they even have a family plan. So you can get your family covered as well. Obviously, there's some age exclusions, some pre-existing medical exclusions, but buy this from a travel agent or a travel advisor who can read the policy language and let you know what you're covered for and, more importantly, what you're not. But yes, these are yearly policies. Okay. Thank you for this. The actor in that TWA commercial was Lawrence Luckinbill. There's a blast from the past. Okay, Mike Lukens is saying he used to live in Sunny Isles. All right. And Patty says, Coach was like business today. I agree. Okay. Yep. Jack says, listen to this. I had a roast beef cut and served in first class in 1989. There was a time on Pan Am and TWA where that cart would come down the aisle with a silver service, and they would carve the roast beef at your seat. Wow. I know I'm dating myself. So are you, Jack. All right. Mike says, just back from 15 hours on a Delta A350 from Cape Town to Atlanta in Delta One. Nice to hear it. Nice that you had a good experience. Okay. Sharon says hi from New York. Thank you for providing the New York City code. Great. We'll see you there. These are all the codes. Tim says, how do you handle a person sitting next to you on a plane that's a little larger and spilling over into your premium seat? Here's how you do it. And this is all due respect to our friends who have weight issues. When you board the plane, before the plane ever pushes back from the gate, you're going to see that situation. I mean, there's no hiding it. You can ask the flight attendant for a seat change. And now, if the plane is full and nobody wants to swap, you're stuck. But if you don't ask then guess what? You're stuck. Second of all, this doesn't pertain to your question, but it's relevant to it. And that is, what about the person sitting next to you stinks, smells, offensive bodily odor? Guess what? It's in the airline's contract of carriage that they can be removed from the flight. However, you better do that when you get on the plane right away, because once the door closes, hey, you're all in for a smell. All right? And Patty says, Spirit Air recommended by Peter. I don't know what you mean by that, Patty. Tell me more. Paul says, I'm considering a trip to Greece in April. Better early April to avoid crowds or later for warmer weather. Orthodox Easter is 420. What are must-see islands? Well, I have a couple of them. Samos, Patmos, Paros, Antiparos, Milos. That'll get you started. Joy says, am I going to be in Philly for the Travel and Adventure Show anymore? The Travel and Adventure Show is not in Philadelphia this year, but I'll find out if they're coming back in 26. Nancy says, hope to see you in Chicago. And Terry's saying hi from Michigan. All right. We love that. Now, a few more things. Now that you know about the Travel and Adventure Shows, let's keep going here. The real problem that we're going to see, other than weather, is what's going to happen after January 20th with both the DOT and the FAA. There's already been somebody nominated to run the FAA. The current administrator has announced he's resigning. Trump has announced another guy. I should tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, one of his previous jobs was lobbying for airlines. That's not a good sign. Number one. Number two, who is going to be finally redefining the role as it should have been redefined from day one of the FAA? It's a regulator about safety. Safety protocols, safety rules, and safety inspections, oversight, and consequences. That's what's got to be done. You can say anything you want about the DOT, you can say anything you want about Boeing, but the buck stops at the FAA. And if you don't fix the FAA, the other problems at Boeing and other manufacturers and outsourcing maintenance is a problem, right? And a continuing problem that can only get worse. You want to hear my New Year's wish list for the FAA? I'm going to sadly report it's been my wish list every year for the past 30 years. Number one, the FAA has to basically hire their own specially and highly trained inspectors to perform the inspections on the manufacture of airplanes, the certification of airplanes as safe and airworthy, and oversight on maintenance of airplanes. They don't have enough staff, and for so many years, as you know, they were letting the manufacturers inspect their own work. Absurd. Conflict of interest to the extreme. Okay, that's number one. Number two, ban lap children on planes. There's not a flight attendant who would not disagree with me. It's a safety hazard. Parents should not be allowed to fly with small kids under the age of 2 on their lap in the event of a hard G-force landing or aborted takeoff. That kid becomes a human missile, and we all know what happens next. It's been proven. It's a scientific fact. It's not even an argument. It's a fact. You can't hold kids on your lap. Why doesn't the FAA make that rule? Time and time again, as the NTSB investigates accidents, what do they find? You know, victims because of that. Number 3, repurposing the definition of what constitutes a safe evacuation time of an aircraft. What have airlines been doing? Adding more and more seats. The space between seats, forget comfort, let's talk about safety, has been reduced. The current rule for compliance is that an airline has to prove that they can safely evacuate a fully loaded plane in less than 90 seconds with half the exits blocked in the dark. Guys, have you flown lately? The airlines can't safely have anybody leave the plane with all the exits open and all the lights on in less than 12 minutes. Something's wrong. The airlines are always allowed to pick the people who did the tests, basically meaning they hired everybody short of the staff of Cirque du Soleil. And now the airlines have been allowed by the FAA, this is truly absurd, to do the test on computer modeling. Total joke. That has to be fixed. Those are 3 things on my wish list for the FAA. We could go beyond that, believe me. Let's start with those 3, and I think we'll be in better shape. Let's scroll down here for a second. Here we go. Give me a second if I can catch up with everybody. Patty's suggesting Paros. I said Paros, and Hydra for Greek Islands. There you go. Okay, now let's go to some questions that you guys asked earlier. Laura's going on a 2-week African safari at the end of September, flying into Cape Town and departing from Johannesburg. When should I make airline reservations? Well, remember, that's Southern Hemisphere. So they're just coming into what? Their summer. So not a bad idea to at least research it now. Don't make any reservations later than May, okay? Bree wants to know, why do airports like Newark and JetBlue Terminal at JFK have almost extremely bad non-brand food options? Wait a second. I love the JetBlue Terminal at JFK. I love their restaurants there. So I don't know what you're talking about. Now, if you're talking about, because you're talking about the JetBlue Terminal at JFK, I mean, I think they do a pretty good job. So be more specific if you can. Okay, Jerry says, my partner has a wish for her birthday to go on a hot air balloon ride. In Finland, they seem somewhat rather dull, and often the weather is a potential issue. I then started to think that if we wrap this alongside a holiday somewhere, okay, you know where you want to take a hot air balloon? You talk about outside the US? Well, there's Cappadocia in Turkey. That's phenomenal. Over the Wadi Rum Desert in Jordan. Unbelievable. Those are 2 of my favorites, right? And then if you're way out west and south, of course, over Coober Pedy and Ayers Rock in Australia. But you will find great balloon operators on every continent and in almost every country. I agree with you on Finland for the most part. However, in Oslo and in Norway, especially in the summer months, it's amazing with the fjords. So you have to pick the right time. But I would absolutely, if you're talking about all year round, Wadi Rum in Jordan and Cappadocia in Turkey. Okay, here we go. Matt says, has Airbnb started attracting scammers? Well, what do you mean by that? He says, my family and I took a trip to Hawaii and had an attempted scam after leaving our Airbnb. They requested money to replace broken items and dirty towels. Okay. That's not scammers. That's not disclosing these ridiculously high cleaning fees, right? What you need to do with Airbnb, especially, is pre-negotiate up front in writing what the cleaning fee is, what it covers, and what it doesn't cover. Then you know what you're in for. All right. Okay. I'm going through these. Here we go. And it says it's our first time to Miami, and we're thinking about staying in either Wynwood or Brickell. Are there areas I'm not considering? You bet. How about Sunny Isles, where I am right now? It all depends on your ground transportation and where you want to go once you get there. So I need you to be a little bit more specific about that, and I can make some other recommendations. All right, let's keep going. Oh, let's do here's one from Tayo. Thoughts on visiting Asuncion, Paraguay in the spring. I understand it's still a developing country. Yes, it is. And at one point, Asuncion and all of Paraguay was really the wild, wild west. But look at the map. Go ahead and go to Asuncion, but then continue on to either Brazil or a little bit further south to Argentina. You'll be okay. All right. Now, let's go to the photo of the week. Look at that. Speaking of Antarctica, this is Terry Bielowski, I believe. And Terry writes, this is an area in the Antarctic Sound called Kayak Bayonne, of the first excursions after crossing the Drake Passage. Remember what I said earlier about how calm the water is once you get out of the Drake? There you are. Nicely done, Terry. I love it. And by the way, if you wait for the light, you'll be waiting a long time because at this time of the year, it's always light. But in any case, enjoy it. And if you think you got a photograph that qualifies as the photo of the week, you know what you do. Just send it to photocontest@petergreenberg.com. And if we agree with you, it goes up there right next to Terry's. Okay, a couple of travel notes and housekeeping notes. Our radio show this week is coming from the Mediterranean on board the Windstar Legend. Now, you might ask, what are we doing in the winter in the Mediterranean on a cruise ship? Well, they got smart at Windstar. They realized that in a world of over-tourism and basically unmanageable crowds, if you're not going there for a suntan, you can still go there for the culture, the food, the music, and the history. And so they started a whole new itinerary of winter cruises in the Med. And so we're on board to talk about that. And also, I call your attention, speaking of over-tourism, to an interview I did with a representative of a group in Barcelona that wants to end over-tourism. But it's one of the crazier interviews we've ever done because of the solutions that they're suggesting. This is the same group, by the way, that was firing water pistols at tourists in Barcelona last summer. So listen in. I think you'll be enlightened, if not entertained. So I hope you'll do that. My voice will come back. Next week, we're coming to you from a very unusual location in Toronto. It'll be Tuesday. And it's a location that most of you, even if you've been to Toronto, have never seen. How's that for a tease? So I'll see you on the air next Tuesday. I'll see you on the radio this Saturday and Sunday. In the meantime, dress warmly. I'll see you in Atlanta at the Travel and Adventure Show this weekend. Speaking of dressing warmly, my voice will come back, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to Anthony for handling all this in California. And once again, to all of our friends in Los Angeles, we're thinking about you and hoping for the best. I'll see you soon, guys.
Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette.